Hello, it's Deborah from the attic, and today I want to share with you these dies. These are from a new brand, Paper Discovery, and this is a brand by Olga Direktorenko, and I have been a fan of her work since I found her YouTube channel about 2 years ago. So when I heard that she'd released her own brand, Paper Discovery, I was absolutely thrilled. And when CraftStash asked me if I'd like to work with her products, I said, yes, please. These dies are exclusively available from CraftStash, and I've checked on your behalf, and they do ship globally. Full details of how you can get free delivery and 20% off your first order are below this video. I've cut out a few of these die cuts so you can see what they look like, and you can see the detail in them and the size of them as well. They're very generously sized, and this is fantastic if you do scrapbooking and you're working on 12 by 12 inch papers, because the widest of these is 8.5 inches. I've cut some as frames and I've cut others as mats so you can see the different ways that you could use these dies. This is the one that we're going to use in our project, but there's also this extra little circular die which is very fine, it's very beautiful, and I'm sure I'll be using that in future projects, but it fits really nicely inside that circle I'm showing you now. So this is one of the set of dies that we're going to use today, and I'm going to show you the other set. This is a die that I've used before. I used it in my last video, and it's called Bird and Branch die set, and it has 7 dies altogether, 6 branches and 1 which cuts out all 8 of those birds at once, so you don't have to fiddle about with individual elements when you're die cutting. Those are the 2 dies that we're going to use today, and I'm going to start with a 6 by 6 plain folded white card. I'm using 2 of the dies that will give me a frame around the outside, but will cut out a circle in the middle. I've used washi tape to secure them down, and I'm running them through my die cut. The washi tape helps keep them in exactly the position that I want, in the centre of my card. This is how it looks when I take them away. I'm going to cut 2 extra elements. One is a large circle from tracing paper, and the other is a frame, and I'll show you the frame and how it will sit over our first die cut. It's going to sit like this. The tracing paper is going to go in between those 2 layers. I've got some Nouveau shimmer powder. The 2 colours that I'm using are Catherine Wheel and Cherry Bomb. I'm sprinkling them over my frame, and I'm going to spritz them with some water to make that pigment colour move. Then I'm going to set it aside to dry. I've used the same 2 shimmer powders to colour up a piece of cardstock, from which I've then cut the birds that you can see in the top right of my picture. I've cut a branch in plain white card from the Bird and Branch die set, and I'm going to sandwich that between my front frame and my transparent paper. I'm going to use a tiny little spot of glue to hold that onto the frame. The frame has a useful little rim which is just going to be large enough to contain my branch end and hold it in place. And now I'm using an instant tack adhesive to go around the outside circle of transparent paper, and I'm placing my frame over the top of it. This is because I found transparent paper wrinkles if you apply glue, so if it's going to be visible, you don't want to risk a wrinkly transparency. Now I'm going to position it over my original aperture. This time I can use a wet glue because the transparent paper will not be seen, and I'm going around the inside of the rim and the outside. And another reason for using a wet adhesive is because I need to move the front frame around so that all of those little holes line up. I'm using a piece of waste paper to help me stick everything down so I don't get messy hand marks all over my lovely card, and I'm using a stamp block to hold it down while the glue dries. I've chosen 2 of the little birds that I cut out earlier, and I'm positioning them on the branch using a tiny little spot of wet glue. It's such a small amount it shouldn't cause any problems to the paper underneath. And again, I'm using a stamp block to hold it into position while the glue dries. And you can see that you get a nice little window with your birds sitting on the branch. And it's a very pretty card, and it's quite quick to make as well. For our next card, we're going to use the same shimmer powders as we used before to get some really pretty effects on our birds, and this is a very simple and a very quick card. This time I'm using falling leaves and blue blitz, and I'm sprinkling them onto a piece of card, and I'm just going to sugar them around a little bit to try and break up those clumps that I've got. And then I'm going to add the falling leaves, the green. This is a beautiful combination of blue and green. It's one of my favourites. Once I'm happy with the amount of powder that I have on the card, I'm going to get some plain water, and I'm going to mist the water over the card to make the pigment move around. And then I'm going to heat set it. You don't need to, but I'm an impatient crafter. I can't wait for things to dry. When my card is dry, I'm going to cut some more of the birds. I'm going to cut some from one side of the card and some from the other side, because I want 8 of the seated birds, or perched birds, rather than the flying birds. And there's plenty of room on this card to allow me to cut more out. I've got a white top folding card. It's about 5.5 by 4 inches, and I'm using a plain black pen to draw a little line across the centre of the card. I want this to be a happy birthday card, but I wanted to say happy bird day to make use of the birds that I've cut out. So I'm just using a naive style of handwriting to write happy birthday on the bottom of my card. Now I've got all of my little birds, I'm going to open the card out, because if you have it folded it gets a bit bouncy. It's easier to work on it flat. And I'm going to position my birds along their little wire, and when I'm happy with where they're all placed, I'm going to glue them down. I'm using a combination of a narrow nozzle glue bottle and a picky-uppy tool, and I'm just adding a tiny little blob of glue on the line where the bird's body will be. I'm deliberately not gluing down the tails, because that will just leave a little bit of dimension on the card. I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. Thank you for watching. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of music and some close-ups of the cards that we've made today. And until we meet again, take care.